Hot Dog Lamb says, at what point would you consider Yuga Labs too big? Could you see them becoming the Web3 version of a monopoly?
I don't think they'll become a monopoly. I think they'll be like a giant, which they already are, and have like a lot of market share, but not a monopoly. What do you think?
I think that's accurate. I think the way that it all works and the rights that the individual owners have and the way the DAO is structured and being run in the first, it's 4 days old or whatever. More than that, but you get the idea. It is such that it's less of a concern probably than it was in previous versions of the web, I guess would be a way of saying it. So I think that it's not a particularly legitimate concern, but it's in terms of sort of stifling creativity and stuff like that. I could see how people would be worried about it, but ultimately people can just kind of do whatever they want. And if people like it, they can support it. And Yuga Labs, they've only really, they bought Larva Labs, right? There's sort of this fear or assumption that they're just going to keep snapping up other projects, which we don't really have any indication is going to be the case. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but I would just say you should go to read Stratechery and all of his stuff where he talks about what he calls aggregation theory, because that really helped me understand the way these big Web2 tech companies were able to get these sort of monopolistic positions. And that'll help you to see what are the similarities and differences between what can happen in Web3 versus what has happened in Web2 are.
Stratechery, is that a blog? Is it
It's a blog by a guy named Ben Thompson. It's really, really good. I've been reading it for years now, and I'm 2 articles behind and feeling guilty about it. I need to read them soon.
At what point would you consider Yuga Labs too big? I mean, that's kind of tricky to say. I would say that I don't think that they're too big now.
That's what she said.
I don't know at what point.
You were talking the other day about like looking at the trending collections or whatever, and they had 4 of the top 10 or something.
They literally had the top 5.
Right. So that definitely, if you're sort of measuring NFT success by daily sales volume, that would definitely be something where, if I was cynical and worried about the diversity of inputs or whatever in the space, that would be definitely concerning. Now, again, I want to reiterate that these projects are very largely, and I believe going to be increasingly largely, decentralized in the way they're run and supported and rewarded and just all of the things. So even though that's what it sort of says, it's not as if one guy named Yuga can just kind of change everything for all of those projects. That's just not the way this whole space is structured. But it would be nice to, and I think that was also like based on the news, like something like Azuki, I'm sure is in the top 5 right this second.
Yes,
so it's not actually all them. And I think that if the space is like worth its salt and as interesting as we believe it is, and as good to creatives and community and all of that stuff as we think it is, there's just going to continue to be awesome new projects that they do not control. And, if they build this cool thing called the other side, that's sort of a decentralized metaverse, so to speak, those will be able to prosper within it. And it'll just be a you scratch my back, I scratch your situation where everybody's getting lifted up together because we're building decentralized rails for all of this stuff. And Yuga will be a big part of that, it seems like, for sure at this point. But I still believe that they believe in the decentralization. My voice just cracked. I'm going through puberty, maybe. So I think that they're going to be good for the space, regardless of the fact that at this point they're a huge entity and will continue to be. And if somehow the space, continues to grow at the speed that it has, and they keep swallowing up more and more of it, I think we can definitely be concerned that it's just all under one thing. But again, that one thing is sort of something that we all control, or can, with the purchase of a single ape coin, for instance. Rather than, again, it's just whatever Mark Zuckerberg says goes for Facebook, which is different. And again, that's a situation where the equivalent would be, the shareholders get to vote, right? And there's some level of decentralization there, but there isn't, because they have a dual class share structure where he gets 10,000 voting rights for each class B share that only he has. So literally just whatever he wants to do is what happens. And that's just not the case with Yuga.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think if we see like Azuki, World of Women, Doodles, all falling under the banner of Yuga, then yeah, maybe is just too much Yuga stuff. But
right,
I don't really think that that's going to happen.
Yeah, it also depends, like, how hands-off are they going to be when they acquire this stuff? If it just is under the same umbrella, but they're not kind of forcing the narratives together and all of that stuff, it's still a lot less concerning than, sort of the equivalent behavior in sort of Web 2 would be. Because, if, for instance, like when Twitter bought Vine, when they decide Vine is no good, they just squash it. And now Vine no longer exists. But Yuga Labs cannot destroy your Azuki NFTs, even if they buy the company behind it and the IP to it, and all of that stuff. We own this stuff individually. And that's just very, very different from what things were before.
Yeah.